Hi everybody, my name's Sammi from Fermenting Australia, and I've got some really exciting things to show you today. I'm going to talk about gut health, our immune system. I'm going to show you a really fantastic, really easy sauerkraut, and talk a little bit more about why fermenting is so important to our health and to preserving foods as well. So a little bit of a background about me. My name is Sammi Zajko and I'm owner of Fermenting Australia. I have a background in nutrition and natural health, and I've been teaching fermentation for the best part of 10 years, traveling around the country, teaching this lost art of fermentation and why it is just so important for our planet, for the environment, and for our health as well. I also have another business called The Gut Warriors, where I teach about gut health and the human microbiome, which again is so linked to fermentation, because when we ferment, we're creating live food full of beneficial bacteria. And I'm also a holistic counsellor. So for me, I love to teach people about some of the benefits of gut health, includes the mental health benefits. And what I've learned over the years working with people, teaching fermentation, is that no matter how fantastic your diet is, if you haven't looked at all aspects of your health on a holistic level, you can never truly be well. So for me, health is really about supporting our microbial health, our gut health, our physical health, our emotional health, and our spiritual health as well. So I'm really excited to be here today at JC Entertainment Studios on behalf of Live Well from the Central Coast Council to be talking a little bit about gut health and talking about fermented foods and sharing some of my tips and hints and tricks along the way today. So I think I'm going to go back a little step first. I am going to demonstrate a sauerkraut for you in a moment, but I want to talk a little bit about gut health and fermented foods and why they are so important for us and some of the benefits, I guess. And if we start to look at ourselves as microbial beings, as we're just actually teeming masses of bacteria. And for some people, that's a really hard concept to get around. But once you start to accept that we're actually more microbe than we are human cells. In fact, for every one human cell, we are 10 microbial cells. It starts to make sense that we support our microbiome, and we support ourselves by diversifying our exposure to beneficial bacteria. In fact, our gut alone has over 30,000 different strains of beneficial bacteria. Okay? So when we start to look at the way that certain things can impact our microbiome and cause a lot of health problems, it makes so much sense that we start to incorporate a wide range of microbially rich fermented foods into our diet, what I call rewilding our microbiome. And we really start to see some of the health benefits when we start to do those types of things. So some of the really amazing benefits of fermented foods include our digestive health. Okay, so I've always said the saying shouldn't be you are what you eat. The saying should be you are what you absorb, or you are what you assimilate, because no amount of beautiful organic whole foods are going to do you any good unless you can utilize and absorb and assimilate those nutrients. Okay, so suddenly incorporating foods into our diet that can help out with our digestion, can help us to break down our foods and more effectively assimilate and absorb those nutrients are going to give us so many benefits. One of the other benefits I mentioned briefly before of fermented foods and of having a good gut and a healthy gut is what we call the gut-brain axis. Okay, and it's this intrinsic link that we're starting to fully understand a lot more between our gut health and our mental health. Okay, and so what we now know is that up to 90% of our serotonin neurotransmitters, that's our feel-good hormones, are actually based in our gut. So it makes sense when we start to look at the work of people like Natasha Campbell-McBride from the Gut and Psychology Syndrome or GAPS diet, that's really looking at that intrinsic link between our gut health and our mental health. Okay, but people have known this for thousands of years. All of our ancestors in so many countries around the world have always understood the importance of fermented foods, okay, for our overall well-being as well as our emotional and our mental health as well. One of the other benefits of fermented foods, which I think is really, really pertinent right now and certainly worth spending some time talking about, is that they can help us support our immune system. Now, in this sort of global situation that we find ourselves in, it feels like now more than ever is the time that we take control of our own health and become empowered in our health decisions for ourselves and for our families, and particularly doing things that are going to support and boost our immune system. Okay, so around 70 to 80% of our immune system is actually based in our gut. So now more than ever, this is such a fantastic time, guys, to start to educate yourselves about gut health. Educate yourselves about the things that damage our microbiome and can affect our gut health negatively, but also more importantly, put some positive spin on this and educate yourselves on how you can support your gut health, how you can support your family's health and their immune health through fermented foods. And I think, so many, natural practitioners and healers and people in the health world have been saying for so long that our health is our wealth. And it hits home to me with what's going on around the world that, if we don't have our health, we don't have anything. And preventative health is just so, so important. In fact, if we don't have our health, we don't have an economy. There's just so many knock-on effects of why our health begins at home with ourselves and with our families, and why that doesn't need to be a scary thing. In fact, it can be an incredibly empowering thing where you can start to take your own health into your own hands. One of the other amazing benefits of fermented foods, again, that just seems so timely right now, is that it's a fantastic way to preserve food. Now, people have used fermentation in times of scarcity over generations. And what a great time now when there is this panic buying and it's difficult to find some foodstuffs and people might be at home and not able to get out and buy fresh foods, that they can create fermented foods and store them at home and know that they're eating something that in fact it has more benefits than its fresh counterpart and will last a longer time as well. So again, for me, being a fermentation revivalist and teaching some of these lost skills over the last 10 years, I've always been really passionate about sharing, the skills of our ancestors. And now I'm seeing more than ever just how important those skills are and why these might be the skills that are going to start to help us through what's going on. So that's a bit of my little spiel there, and I'm really excited to show you guys how to make a sauerkraut. I'm going to answer some questions that, some commonly asked questions as well. And I do encourage you, if you've got any other questions, to pop them into the comments below and I can answer those as we go along. But I'm going to show you how to make a really basic sauerkraut. Now, this is so simple. Anybody can do it. You don't need it's important for me that you don't need any specialized equipment. It's important for me that it's accessible to anybody and that it's affordable for anybody. And anybody can have live, raw, bacterially rich, beneficial fermented foods in their homes and in their diets. So it's going to be really simple, and you guys can follow along at home and do this yourselves as well. Actually, before I go any further though, I was talking before, this is what I've prepared earlier, and I was talking before about, those beneficial microbes, in our fermented foods. And so what the research shows us and what the research has told us is that one mouthful of live, raw, homemade sauerkraut, for example, is the equivalent, so one mouthful of sauerkraut is the equivalent to one bottle of probiotic capsules in terms of its CFUs or colony-forming units. So this is incredibly rich and diverse beneficial bacteria that are just teeming in their hundreds of thousands of colony-forming units in a jar of sauerkraut. And this is something that you can do at home to create your own beneficial bacteria to really, again, rewild your microbiome. Okay? So really, really simple. What I've got here today, like I said, it's a basic sauerkraut, and you can play with different flavors yourself. So I'm going to use some really basic flavors, a nice European flavor. I like to use caraway seeds. It's a really great sort of starting flavor when we make sauerkraut. But how about next time when you make your own sauerkraut, you can add in a whole bunch of different flavors if you wanted to. You could add, instead of caraway seeds, you could add cumin seeds. You could add mustard seeds. You could add some immune boosting herbs like garlic and ginger and chili, and I love adding chipotle chilies or jalapenos to my sauerkraut for a really spicy immune boosting sauerkraut. You could add some turmeric and some black pepper. And the turmeric, when we add black pepper, of course, it increases the bioavailability of the curcumin, which has those amazing potent anti-inflammatory qualities. So again, it's starting to incorporate food as medicine, using those medicinal qualities of our herbs and of our food to really create something that's nutrient dense, really beneficial, and really great to support our immune system too. And delicious as well. I think that's a really important thing, is these flavors are delicious. Those lactic acidy, compelling, delicious flavors of fermented foods really complement a lot of foods that we eat. Now, I'll admit some people don't have a palate for fermented foods and they can find those flavors quite confronting. But my, 10 to 12 years, I think I've been doing this and teaching this and sharing fermented foods around the country, I'm always amazed at how much people are really drawn to these flavors of fermented foods. And in fact, people who often think that perhaps they aren't drawn to these flavors of fermented foods, when they try it, they're often really pleasantly surprised. So I think that's one of the other amazing benefits of fermented foods, is they're delicious and they really make our food sing with flavor. And they're a lot of fun as well. Great thing to do with your kids. If you've got kids at home, why not get them involved in fermenting? On my on my website, I have a blog, and it's all called Fermenting Kids, and it's kids around Australia whose parents have done one of my classes, for example, and then are teaching their kids how to make their own fermented foods. Again, we're teaching these really important skills. These, to me, are life skills. And these are great ways to get kids involved in the kitchen, get kids involved in their own health and their own food, and learn something new as well. So you can get your kids to chop and join us as well. So here's my really basic sauerkraut. And like I said, really simple, anybody can do this. So I'm going to use in total half a cabbage. So I've got a quarter cabbage, green cabbage chopped up here already, and I'm going to chop up a quarter of a red cabbage. I'm going to put my gloves on just to keep things nice and sanitary. Okay. So I've got a quarter of green cabbage here, and I'm going to chop up a quarter of a red cabbage or a purple cabbage. Now you can do just green or just red if you wanted to. I love the colour combination of a green and a red cabbage because it creates this beautiful high vibe, vital sauerkraut here. And look, I think we eat with our eyes as well. And this is, when we say eat a rainbow every day, this is high vibe food. This is really, really good stuff. So I'm just going to really quickly chop my purple cabbage. I always say chopper's choice. If you want to chop thick and chunky, you can. If you want to chop nice and thin and fine, you can too. Somewhere in between. Excuse me. Let's see, I've done this before, just a few times. Beautiful. And just the rest of this one. And this is going to make me about 1 litre of sauerkraut, so I'm going to have about 1 kilo of vegetables here. And in total about half a cabbage. You can get this core if you want, you can slice it really finely and put that through as well. I'm just going to leave that today, but if you wanted to, I don't like to waste food, so use everything that you've got. You can chop that core up nice and finely. Okay. Awesome. And what I've also added here already was I've already chopped up half an onion. So I'd already chopped up half a brown onion and added that as well. Now you can do brown onion, red onion, green onion, white onion, whatever you like. But again, I think it adds a really nice flavour. Now it's not strictly necessary to add onion. I've got someone here in the studio who's FODMAP sensitive and doesn't eat onion and garlic. So there's no reason why you have to. This is just a nice basic guideline. But the great thing about fermented foods is there's so much variety that you can do. There's so many different variations on flavour, on combinations, and this is a great starting point. Okay, I have an ebook on my website, a sauerkraut ebook with lots of different sauerkraut flavours, including Mexican flavoured sauerkraut, Thai flavoured sauerkraut, immune boosting. I think my immune boosting sauerkraut recipes on my ebook. I have an online masterclass that teaches you a lot more depth and a lot more different inspiration and flavour combinations that you can do as well. So there's just so many different things you can make, and that's part of the fun of fermenting. So I'm going to also add to this here some caraway seeds. Now, like I said, this is a nice traditional European flavour, a nice basic sauerkraut. About a dessert spoon of caraway seeds. And then I'm going to add my salt. Now, salt is a really, really important component of fermenting. In fact, it's pretty crucial to fermentation. And I just want to, I guess, explain a little bit about how fermentation works. And that's why, where the salt fits in. So basically, all vegetables on planet Earth naturally contain lactic acid bacteria, or lactobacillus. Okay? It just so happens that lactobacillus is halophilic. Now, halo means salt, philic means loving. It loves salt. So when you create a salty, mineral-rich environment, it allows those natural lactic acid bacteria naturally present on these vegetables to grow and proliferate. And that's how we get our jars of sauerkraut that are teeming with these live beneficial bacteria. Okay, so salt's important. It serves a couple of other purposes. I'm going to add my salt and then I'll talk about why it's important. So we've got about 1 kilo of vegetables here, and I'm going to add, it's a 2% salt ratio, so I'm going to add 20 grams of salt to my kilo of veggies. Now, a very small teaspoon of salt is about 5 grams. I'm going to add 4 small teaspoons of salt. Okay, and again, all my ebooks and online masterclasses cover all these salt ratios in a bit more detail as well, but this is, you can't go wrong if you follow along with something like this. So there's my salt. And now what I'm going to do, I'm actually just going to start to massage my sauerkraut. Okay, now through a bit of manual, massaging and breaking down those cell walls of the vegetables, along with the salt, which is going to have the process of osmosis from the salt is going to start to draw some liquid from the vegetables. We're going to start to release some liquid from our cabbage. Okay, so back to what I was saying, salt serves a couple of other purposes. It adds flavour, obviously. To me, a sauerkraut without salt is like butter without salt. It just kind of falls flat in flavour. It's not much fun to eat. And then, of course, through this process of osmosis, it draws out the liquid and allows us to ferment our cabbage in its own juices. Okay, so it really intensifies the flavour as well and allows for that fermentation. So I'm just going to massage this here. It won't take long. Again, this is a great thing to get your kids involved with. This is a great thing to put some music on and have a massage. Good bit of exercise. And you can see already that I'm starting to release some liquid. If you can't massage your sauerkraut, if you've got bad hands or arthritis or something like that, use a drink bottle, use a pestle, use something a sauerkraut pounder of some sort to pound your sauerkraut to start to break it down. As long as we're breaking down those cell walls and mixing that salt through it. Okay, and that's starting to get a bit of liquid. I'm not sure if the cameras can see that, but it's starting to come a little bit translucent. I'll do another little bit. And what a great thing to do if you've got a bit of time on your hands, which most of us do at the moment at home. Make some sauerkraut, be proactive, try some new flavours. I think it's such a time potentially of expansion and learning new skills and really, I guess, challenging ourselves to learn new ways and to think outside the box and outside the square. It's something I'd encourage you guys all to try. Okay, so just massaging my sauerkraut. And I can see there it's sort of reduced, the amount of the bulk has reduced somewhat. I can see that the cabbage is starting to become quite translucent. There's a little bit more liquid there. And remember, that process of osmosis is going to continue. So over time, the salt will continue to draw liquid from the vegetables. So I think that's probably enough. And see, that didn't take long. That took me, I don't know, what, 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes maybe of massaging my sauerkraut. It's really simple. To me, fermentation shouldn't be something that you put on the too hard list or the to-do list to do later. It's something that you can fit into your busy lifestyles, and you'll get so many benefits from having these beautiful foods in your diet. Okay. So then I'm going to stuff my sauerkraut into a jar. Now, again, you don't need any specialised equipment with fermentation. That's what I love about it. This is actually just a recycled jar that I've used. You can use any of your recycled coconut oil jars, coffee jars, anything like that, or you can purchase jars specifically. This is a 500 gram jar, so I'm actually just going to stuff my sauerkraut into this. This is going to make me about 1 litre of sauerkraut, but I'm just going to do just the small one now. You can do any size jar. Personally, I like to ferment in smaller batches. I like to do lots of small batches, so lots of 500 gram jars, lots of litre jars. Even 2 litres can work quite well, but nothing wrong with small batches. And if you've got any spare leftover jars and leftover sauerkraut, you can just stick any leftover bits in small amounts of jars as well. And you've always got, you know, a little sample or something to share with friends or family or something, you know, to... I always like to have sauerkraut on me, so I like small jars of it. So I'm just going to start to pack my sauerkraut into the jar. And as I go, if you can fit your hand in, great. If you can't, you know, get maybe a mallet or a pestle or something to start to push it down. I just like to pack it in as compactly as I can. Try to push out as many air bubbles as I can as well as I go. And you can see here already, I think you can see here, that some liquid is starting to come up over the vegetables. Okay. I'll tell you why this is important in a moment. Okay, so still just packing this in, and again you can see that liquid there coming right up over the veggies. If you can't see it, trust me, it is. Okay. Okay, and look at all that, that liquid's actually spilling out over the top now. And that liquid is just from my cabbage, so I haven't added anything extra. And again, remember that is really going to intensify the flavour because it's going to ferment in its own juices, which is a really, really great thing to do. Now, the reason why this is important is because vegetable fermentation is an anaerobic process. So basically our primary goal when we're fermenting vegetables is to submerge vegetables under a liquid, and you can't really go wrong. Okay, so we've got all this liquid here that we can keep submerged. Okay, do I have, no I don't, that's okay. Now when we're doing this, people like to keep their vegetables submerged in all manner of different ways. Some people like to get a glass plug or a ceramic plug, even a little Ziploc bag full of a bit of water, nestle it in the top to keep it submerged. Sometimes I like to get an unused cabbage leaf and just pop it in the top, fold it in, pop the lid on top, and that will keep it pushed down and submerged. But to be honest, just packing it in like this and keeping it pushed under works just as well. And what I would recommend that you do is every couple of days, just open up your jar, okay? Have a smell, have a taste, and just with your spoon, I'm just going to get a shot here of this, just push those vegetables back under the liquid, okay? This is for the next couple of days after you've made your sauerkraut. And what we're doing is we're making sure that vegetables stay submerged, and we're making sure that, you know, because that process of fermentation, it's going to expand slightly. But every couple of days, just push it back under so that they're submerged in their own liquid to ferment. Pop our lid on. And then we have the beginnings of a jar of sauerkraut, okay? Pretty simple, yeah? What I can't give you guys today is the element of time. That really is all that's involved in making a sauerkraut. And you just need to be patient after that. Now, people often ask, you know, how long does it take to make sauerkraut? And I'm usually really vague when I talk about this, and I'm vague for a reason. It's because there's no exact amount of time. And to me, that's one of the amazing things about fermenting, is that there is no definitive answer. And there's so many variables depending on the climate, the time of year, what flavours you like, because it's very subjective. But as a general rule, I like to say after 2 or 3 days, you're going to start to get some bubbles, some activation, some expansion. You know, that fermentation process is going to start to begin. After 2 or 3 weeks, and I'll show you this one, this is a couple of weeks old, you know, we're going to start to have some of those delicious fermented flavours coming through, that sharpness, that tanginess, and again, we're creating quite a young and green, but delicious fermented food product. After 2 or 3 months, if you can wait that long, those flavours are going to start to mature and mellow. They'll become more sour as the sugars are broken down and consumed by the lactobacillus. And we're going to have a much more mature sauerkraut. 2 or 3 years, not so realistic in Australia. Certainly it's possible, but you know, I always like to recommend for people, weeks to months is a really nice sort of time frame when it comes to fermenting, and you're going to start to have some really delicious flavours during that time frame. So I'm just going to get a camera shot on this one here. This is one that I've made a few weeks ago, so this might be maybe 2 or 3 weeks old. And you can see there's still some liquid, I can smell it too. You can see some bubbles because it's live food. There's some live activation, some beneficial microbes in here, which is really, really good. And you can see a lot of that liquid there's still some liquid in there, but quite a bit of it has evaporated. And that's going to happen over time as well, so that's okay. So once it's fully fermented through, you can start to enjoy your delicious sauerkraut. People often ask me, do I need to keep it in the fridge? Look, the answer is that a fridge is a fermentation slowing device. It will keep your ferments, at that flavour for longer. So certainly if you like the flavour that it's at, you want to preserve it at that flavour, pop it in the fridge. For me personally, I never really got into the habit of keeping my ferments in the fridge, and I generally don't. I keep them on a bench. I keep them, I've got a fermenting room at my house, but I keep them out of the fridge and allow them to naturally ferment and change and evolve in flavour and in microbial kind of diversity over time. So a fridge isn't necessary, but certainly you can pop it in a fridge once it's reached a flavour or a fermented kind of state that you prefer. Some other questions are often things like, what kind of salt do I use? I usually like to use an unrefined sea salt, just a really nice basic salt. When I'm fermenting at home for my family, I'll often use like a Celtic sea salt or a Himalayan salt. Again, we've got those 82 trace minerals, so we're looking at, adding extra nutrient density. So, the better quality ingredients, the better quality outcome, the most nutrient dense outcome. But any kind of just a plain unrefined sea salt works really, really beautifully. People often also ask questions like, what other things can you ferment? You can ferment so many different things, and that's part of the joy of fermentation and the creative process of fermentation. I think sauerkraut's always a great place to start, using cabbage as the base. And we can add to that cabbage all different manner of flavours and spices and vegetables. So you might like to chop up some radishes through your cabbage. You might like to grate some beetroot or grate some carrot. I love some chopped fennel through my sauerkraut. I even you'll have to check out my Mexican kraut recipe, which is delicious. It's so good with like fajitas and nachos and guacamole and things, with chopped corn and chipotle chilies and capsicum mixed through my sauerkraut. It's just amazing and delicious and just transforms any flavour. So I guess that's just a bit of an idea that there are so many different things that you can ferment. We can also look at things like kimchi, which is a Korean ferment, lots of spices and chili and different really pungent, delicious flavours. You can ferment other vegetables on their own without the cabbage. You can ferment through brining, pickles and radishes and black carrot sticks and all lovely things like that as well. So this is just a taste of the fermenting rabbit hole that I hope this might take you guys on. There's certainly so much out there when it comes to the transformative health benefits and the fun and the joy and the flavours that can be created with fermentation. So I really encourage you to check out, my Facebook page, Fermenting Australia, my Instagram, Fermenting_Australia, and of course my website with my blog articles and online masterclasses and ebooks and all those wonderful things, and start to discover the joy of fermentation. Use this time wisely to support your health. Take back control of your family's health and become connected to your food. And I always say at all my classes, and I'm going to wish this to all of you guys as well, and that is, if fermentation can give you even a fraction of the joy and the healing that it's given to me, and when I say healing, I mean on all levels, body, mind and spirit, then you have a beautiful life ahead of you. And I really encourage you to embrace these microbes, embrace these live foods, and see where it takes you on this beautiful transformative journey into health. So thank you so much, guys. I hope you enjoy. I look forward to connecting with you all, answering your questions. And again, thank you to Central Coast Council and Live Well for this amazing creative interpretation of this event. You guys have done great, and everybody stay safe, stay well, and stay happy and healthy. Thank you.